Harper was on the military and didn't have to kowtow to or look after the military interest that existed in East Timor to the same extent as Suharto did. Under a considerable amount of pressure, internal pressure here from our own party and from the public, Downer and Howard got together and wrote a letter to Habib, which simply said, this situation needs to be resolved. We propose that you have some form of act of self-determination. We suggest that you do it in the same way the French were done in New Caledonia, that over a 10-year period there be some form of autonomy, and that at the end of that 10-year period you have an act of self-determination to see whether the people of East Timor wish to be an independent nation or remain incorporated. This infuriated Habib, and it infuriated the Indonesian military. As far as Habib was concerned, if he wasn't going to have 10 years of administering East Timor for them to walk away, so he decided that there would be an act of self-determination straight away, as soon as possible. So Habib went to the UN and made a request in '99 that the UN supervise an act of self-determination of the East Timorese people. We get some pictures later on. Okay, so the UN supervision really comprised of UNIMET, United Nations mission in East Timor, and that was to supervise the preparations and the conduct of the ballot. The important thing about UNIMET was it had no military authority, it had no military power, it had no way of enforcing. All the people who went to it, civilians and police, were unarmed. And this was on the insistence of Habib, and it would not have happened if there was any intention to arm these people. So the Indonesians were held responsible for the safety and security of the whole of the process. Had the UN not agreed to that, and Australia agreed to that, the whole process would not have gone ahead, and the bloody reprisals would have just continued. So, the ballot was held on the 30th of August. 451,000 people registered out of just over 1 million people in East Timor. That's a very, very high registration. People came down from the hills where they were hiding from the militia and registered for the vote. And the turnout, as you can see, 98.8% turnout. Huge turnout, despite all the threats. And then 78.5% voted for independence. So the people of East Timor had spoken and said, we want independence. What was the reaction? The reaction was mayhem. There was a militia rampage throughout East Timor, and I'll show you some photographs of what we saw there, while the TNI and the civil police stood aside. Virtually all of the UTAET people had been forced to evacuate, so there was about 1,400 civilians were probably killed. Over 300,000 people were displaced from East Timor, and most of them went into West Timor. 90% of the civil infrastructure was destroyed. There was a scorched earth policy throughout the whole countryside. There was no international monitoring or supervision. The intervention. The resolution of 15 September 1999 said that they would put in a multinational force to restore law and order in East Timor. They deployed on the 20th of September. Now, we've been doing a lot of preparation before this because we knew this was going to happen, so it wasn't as if on that short period from 15 to 20 that we put forward the forces we did. But there were 5,000 people in the initial force, and then it grew to 11,000 people in the multinational force. The job was to secure Dili and the towns and patrol the borders, while the Indonesians withdrew from East Timor, which they did eventually in reasonably good order by the 28th of September. And UNIMET was re-established in control, so Interfed finished its formal military role during that period. Here's some pictures of what the Australians did in East Timor. Foot patrols, massive air insertions, great resources. We had Air Force, C-130s, you can see in the background, Black Hawk helicopters. It was important to get in on the ground very quickly before any more damage was done and any more reprisals were carried out against the people. Armoured personnel carriers patrolling the roads. Amphibious landing, where we had to get into places like Suai, which is down the coast a bit. Helicopters to fly around, And you can see in that picture there's a guy, also a civilian there, being evacuated as well, so there was some civil works done. See a bit of the damage that sort of was done by the militia. Street patrolling in Dili. Evacuating the IDPs. A lot of people were displaced, and so we sent amphibious landing craft around to find these people and bring them back to where they belong. There were health clinics, of course. And we were making friends as well. Now, my visit to East Timor. I went in October '99 for the first ministerial visit into East Timor with John Moore. We found Dili was completely destroyed. The border region was lifeless. As we flew over the border region in a helicopter, you could see no livestock, no people moving, nobody on the roads, nobody in the fields, just a completely lifeless area around the border. The population was shattered and people were dazed. A very, very angry neighbour, Indonesia, very, very angry with us. So here are some photographs. We flew into Dili. You can see the strain on John's face. He'd been under a lot of pressure. And you'll see the strain on my face and Peter Cosgrove's faces in some other later shots as well. That's what it looked like as we drove into Dili. We had an SAS escort with us the whole time. Pretty tough guys there, looking after us. There are my feet, you can see there, sitting on the side of the helicopter. The back of the head there is Peter Cosgrove's head, actually. We were actually flying there and we looked at each other and said, you know, the last time we did this was in Vietnam, in the 1970s. But you can see the destruction there below. The commercial centre is completely in ruins. Hospitals, libraries, museum, whole lot destroyed. The government residences along the seafront, completely destroyed. The places where the people were living, even the camp holes, in places burned. Out in the country, even worse. Nowhere steady. That's at Maliana. The East Timorese faced a very, very daunting task in that stage. This photograph is an interesting photograph. It shows Zarana, John Moore, Peter Cosgrove, and just behind here, just on this little white colour there, the shirt, that's me. And you can identify the shirt in the later photograph. The most remarkable thing about that meeting, which is the first meeting that an East Timorese had, as Janata has had an Australian government official, the thing that struck me is Ms. Mail said, we must learn to live with Indonesia. There can be no revenge. And it's interesting to see just 2 days ago, the East Timorese actually signed a pact, defence pact with the Indonesians. On the road again, back with Bruce Scott in January 2000. How different was it? We found the notion slowly on the net. There are a lot of people still in the refugee camps. The people had come down from the hills and people were starting to settle back in their villages. People were out on the streets. The place still in ruins, but people attempting to rebuild East Timor. The Balabar house still there for the journalist who killed in '75. That's a typical border patrol camp. There's some armoured units out there on the border. And you can see they're not actually now displaced tactically, they're just lined up, so it's a fairly peaceful sort of environment they're in, but they were still active patrolling. And the major issues then were really about whether people were trying to come across the border, militia, etc. But the TNI at that stage had given up in terms of trying to pressure and disrupt. Dili port was open again, and East Timor was now at an uneasy peace. This is the stress. You saw the stress on John's face. That's Peter Cosgrove's. You can see the stress on Peter's face. I'm not looking very happy either. It's me in the middle of the helicopter there. Come back in 2000. Now, questions and answers. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions. And if you don't have any questions, here's something to help. Does anybody want to ask a question? Did I say... Did we misread Indonesia's intention? Somebody asked.